fierce debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
No,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes & Kerr weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, good evening. It's me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, on State of the Nation tonight. Kemi Badenoch has broken the political consensus and smashed the uni party in her rebuke of net zero. Tonight, I'll debate not one, not two, but three net zero advocates. Meanwhile, as the Israel-Hamas ceasefire is on the brink of crumbling, we'll be debating why Hamas is yet to return the remaining hostages. A new report has found that children lost 11 million days of learning following the lockdowns, with absences and suspensions up by 2/3. One of the report's authors will join me shortly. Plus, I'll be joined by a military historian to reflect on the death of the last of the Battle of Britain pilots. John, known as Paddy Hemingway, has died at 105. State of the Nation starts now. I'll also be joined by my most pugnacious panel, former editor of The Sun, Kelvin Mackenzie, and the author and journalist Michael Crick. As always, I want to know your views, mailmog@gbnews.com. But now, it's your favourite time of the day, the News Bulletin with Tatiana Sanchez.
Jacob, thank you very much. The top stories. Conservative leader Kemi Badenoch says it's impossible for the UK to meet its net zero target by 2050, a goal set by a previous Conservative government. The UK is legally committed to reaching net zero by 2050 under a law passed by former Tory Prime Minister Theresa May in 2019. In a speech today, Ms Badenoch said net zero cannot be achieved by then without a serious drop in our living standards. The Conservative leader did not set out an alternative target date, but said she would consider doing so if her party found a better way of delivering net zero. The Israeli Prime Minister says last night's airstrikes on Gaza, in which at least 413 people died, according to Hamas officials, are just the beginning, despite being called horrifying by the United Nations. The Hamas-run health ministry says a further 562 people were injured in the attacks, which put an end to a fragile ceasefire between terror group Hamas and Israel. The Israeli Prime Minister this evening said that the IDF had gone back to fighting with great might after Hamas failed to release the remaining hostages it's holding following its attack on southern Israel on the 7th of October 2023. The Israeli military earlier said strikes would continue for as long as necessary and would extend beyond airstrikes, meaning Israeli ground troops could resume fighting. The news comes as Foreign Secretary David Lammy said yesterday that Israel had committed a breach of international law for the first time since the conflict began. Elsewhere, Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin have agreed to seek a limited ceasefire in Ukraine on energy infrastructure, with further negotiations starting immediately, the White House says. Vladimir Putin's envoy, Kirill Dmitriev, said under the leadership of both presidents, the world has become a much safer place. The Kremlin says the Russian president agreed to a proposal by Mr. Trump for Russia and Ukraine to stop hitting each other's energy infrastructure for 30 days. The Kremlin also says Mr. Putin is committed to a peaceful resolution to the conflict with Ukraine. President Zelensky has responded this evening, saying talks about Ukraine without Ukraine will not bring results. He also says an unconditional or partially unconditional ceasefire would be a positive result, and those are the steps towards peace. And the last surviving pilot who fought in the Battle of Britain, Group Captain John Paddy Hemingway, has died at the age of 105. The Royal Air Force says he passed away peacefully yesterday. He was part of the group known as the Few, who defended the UK from the large-scale assaults by the German Air Force, the Luftwaffe. The RAF said the Group Captain Hemingway's squadron shot down 90 enemy aircraft during an 11-day period in May in 1940. The Prince of Wales has paid tribute to Mr. Hemingway, saying we owe so much to Paddy and his generation for our freedoms today. And those are the latest GB News headlines for now. More from me in an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Welcome back to State of the Nation. Here was the Conservative Party leader, Kemi Badenoch, tearing up the Uniparty earlier today.
Climate change requires a response, but that response cannot bankrupt us, otherwise we will not deliver it. And that response needs to be one that the whole world follows, not just the UK. And one of the things that I'll be talking about later today is the fact that we have decarbonised faster than any other country in the developed world. But people aren't following us, and we are deindustrialising. We're getting poorer and having more expensive energy bills as a result. Families are having to pay so much more. Businesses are closing because they can't afford electricity prices. And we've got to do something about that.
This is a tremendous start, and Kemi Badenoch is right to take the lead on this. For too long in British politics, the Uniparty has taken the net zero 2050 promise as holy writ. It has gone unquestioned and is assumed to be affordable because it is virtuous. This speech shatters that consensus wide open and should force the ruling class to reflect on the most absurd mistruth on which net zero is based. The net zero zealots want you to believe not only that the green agenda is virtuous and morally pure, but that it will directly benefit you. The fundamental mistruth is that green energy means cheaper energy, but the following points show this is wrong. Bearing in mind that nearly half of energy generated in the UK is renewable resources, the average cost of energy per kilowatt hour in the United Kingdom is 44 cents. Meanwhile, in the United States, a country that pursues a policy of drill, baby, drill, the cost of energy is less than half, 17 cents per kilowatt hour. But the contrast is even more stark in countries that continue to build coal power stations and have practically no regard for the green agenda, namely India and China, in which the average price of energy is 8 cents per kilowatt hour, a fifth of our price. To achieve this, last year alone, China increased its coal use by 300 million tonnes to 4.9 billion tonnes of coal. The United Kingdom has the fourth highest energy prices in the world, behind Ireland, Belgium and Germany. What do these countries all have in common? They're all heavily reliant on green energy. So the question is, why does this matter? Well, as Winston Churchill once said, for a nation to try to tax itself into prosperity is like a man standing in a bucket and trying to lift himself up by the handle. The very same applies to net zero and energy. The correlation between cheap energy and economic growth is clear. While we have suffered stagnant growth in the pursuit of green energy policies, countries like India, China and the United States have prioritised economic growth. If we are to have affordable energy, affordable green energy, then we need innovation, prosperity and economic growth. Net zero defeats that objective and is making us cold and poor. As ever, let me know your views via mailmog@gbnews.com. Well, I'm now joined by a trio of esteemed net zero advocates: State of the Nation regular Donohoe McCarthy of the Climate Media Coalition, Paul Powsland, barrister and founder of Lawyers for Nature, and Rachel Solomon-Williams, Executive Director of the Aldersgate Group. Well, Donald, I'm going to give you the first word as you're such a regular and loyal friend to this programme. This is really important, isn't it, what Kemi is saying? She has broken the consensus, and people are actually going to vote for cheap energy.
Well, she has broken the consensus, but I wish it was on an honest premise. She has betrayed Margaret Thatcher's legacy. Margaret Thatcher was a can-do Prime Minister. She said we should lead on climate change. Badenoch is going to be the can't-do opposition leader. The main flaw in her speech was she said that UK electricity prices are expensive because of the green transition. They are not. A parliamentary report recently clearly stated the reason why our electricity prices are so expensive, and we've had this number of times.
Before.
Yeah, it is very clear. It's because our electricity prices, more than any other country in Europe, are linked to fossil gas. And you were going to say back to me, what about backup? The issue about backup is no matter whether it's nuclear or gas, we have to have backup. And backup battery is now cheaper than fossil gas.
But we haven't got it, and that requires billions of pounds. And that actually, if you run gas permanently, it is cheaper. That's why it's cheaper in the United States. That's why it's cheaper in other countries. It's why the most expensive countries are all the ones that have the most renewables.
That's interesting, because the last time we met, I read out a list of other countries in Europe that have more green electricity than Britain, and their prices are actually around a third of ours. There's only one reason.
Norway is the exceptional one, but Norway has pretty much free gas.
There's Norway, there's Sweden, there's Spain, there's Austria, all have cheaper prices than us, and they've more electricity.
Denmark. Rachel, let me bring you in, because if you look at what China's doing, it is extremely competitive. We are buying lots of goods from China, and we're pretending that the emissions don't exist as they come into us. So we have reduced our steel production by 70% as we've reduced our industrial emissions, but we've still imported the steel. We haven't not used steel.
So what we absolutely need to do is take advantage of the same opportunity that China's taking advantage of. They're choosing to manufacture goods that are needed for the low-carbon transition. They're installing enormous amounts of renewable energy. They're producing batteries, they're producing electric vehicles. If we do the right thing with our industrial strategy, we can also take advantage of that opportunity.
But they're actually using enormous amounts of coal to produce cheap electricity. That's what is underpinning their economic success.
Their energy makeup includes a significant amount of renewables, and they are hand over fist building that out as quickly as they can.
But they're still building coal, which keeps their prices low. That's the essence of it. They're not moving away from coal, and they're not running their coal-powered stations just as backup. They're running them 24 hours a day as base load, which coal is very good for.
I don't think there's any evidence to suggest that it's coal that's keeping their prices low. Renewables are the cheapest form of electricity now available on this planet.
But that's just not true. Renewables are not the cheapest form of energy, as we know perfectly well. They're only cheap when you exclude backup. And that makes gas and other things more expensive because you're not running them efficiently, and you have the capital cost that is being applied to using them for a small number of hours when you're short of energy, when you're short of renewables, rather than doing it over 365 days a year. Surely that's right, Paul.
Well, I think something else that's interesting is about the issue around investment. And I think a lot of what Kemi was saying was that, oh, this is going to bankrupt, it's going to be really expensive. And, of course, if we only look at the installation costs, that's what it looks like. So the Committee on Climate Change say it's going to cost $700 billion, not the trillions Kemi mentioned, but $700 billion for the capital investment to install both the power generation and all the backups and batteries and networks and everything else. However, over the course of the time to 2050, it's going to save $600 billion in cost because, of course, sunlight, once you've installed the panels, is free. Wind is free once you've installed the turbines. So the net cost is $100 billion.
Paul, as you know perfectly well, sunlight is free when the sun is shining and the wind is free when the wind is blowing. What do you do when it isn't? That's where the high cost comes from, because you have to have the backup, and the backup is extremely expensive. And we're miles away. I'm just going to come back to this, but we're miles away from having the battery resources that would provide for that, and that in itself is very expensive.
That's taken into account in the plan put forward by the Committee on Climate Change. They're not just saying, oh, we're just going to put a few panels in. They're saying that cost is the cost, including the generation and all the backups and batteries. And so that there is a net cost, true, of $100 billion to be found between now and 2050, which is 0.2% of the GDP, and a potential cost. Obviously, it's not certain, but there's a possibility that the cost from not tackling climate change could be up to 8% of GDP.
That's a completely theoretical cost and assumes that other people are also doing it, which they're not. America was pretending to do it and wasn't, and now it's not even pretending. China and India are still not really caring about this at all. They don't care how much carbon dioxide they put out.
I think as a free marketeer and somebody committed to the free market, I think you're missing two really important points in today's speech. It was economically illiterate and it was politically illiterate. Why economically illiterate? Because the CBI last week said the green economy in Britain is already worth...
When has the CBI ever been right? The CBI is never right. I mean, if the CBI has suddenly gone green, that reassures me.
It's not a prediction. It's actually a fact about the current size of the green economy. It's 83 billion.
But these aren't proper jobs. These are jobs which are hugely dependent on subsidy.
83 billion pounds to the green economy.
On taxpayer subsidy.
No, it's £1 billion worth of, sorry, 1 million jobs, and the CBI said those jobs are £5,000 better paid than the average. And your point about subsidy is 10 years out of date.
It's not. They're all dependent. Look at Drax.
10 years ago.
We're going to spend billions of pounds subsidising Drax, which is going to fall on ordinary electricity users. It's a complete scam.
I don't accept that the subsidy for Drax should continue, and the government is cutting it compared to the government.
Billions.
But the new wind, new solar, are all cheaper than fossil fuels. And the second thing, politically...
They're not, because you don't have any, and you're not taking into account the backup.
You're saying you keep saying that.
The backup is essential.
But every single form of energy requires backup. What happened 2 years ago in France? 50% of their nuclear fleet collapsed.
That's why gas is so useful. That's why gas is so useful.
And the only time we've had a blackout in Britain is when the gas went down.
When did the gas go down?
Around 2 years ago in East Anglia, the gas power stations went down and we had a blackout.
We have masses of gas supply. We have an ability to build... Yes, but where were the renewables when the gas went down 2 years ago? We had masses of renewables because the wind wasn't blowing. Rachel, let me bring you back in because you're sitting there very politely and quietly. That is the point, that the basic mistake of the economics of renewables is that it always ignores backup. Yes, of course, once you've put up your windmill and the wind blows, the electricity is theoretically very cheap. But when it's not blowing, you have this extraordinarily high cost of getting the backup, and that is always true, and that needs to be included in the accounting.
Can we also talk about the geopolitical risk of gas for a moment? So we saw what happened when the Ukraine war broke out. The cost of gas escalated astronomically.
But that's because we haven't fracked. We're sitting on
sitting on enormous, and it's not
trillions of cubic feet.
It's not been shown to be available or safe.
We've got 10 years. It's perfectly safe. It's been shown to be safe. There's a brilliant report in 2012 that shows that the information on seismic activity is less from fracking than it is from a fall in a disused coal mine. The ridiculousness over seismic activity and fracking is pure myth.
As soon as
extremely
the public
effective
were
and safe.
consulted about fracking, they decided that they didn't want to have any of it in their areas. And I don't think that's going to change anytime soon, which means we're extremely vulnerable for as long as we continue to be dependent on gas brought in from other parts of the world.
But we don't need to be. Lincolnshire alone has enough, for 10 years' supply of gas? This is really exciting. It's just been in the papers recently.
But that would
really cheap local gas that we could use.
So why not have an infinite supply of solar energy?
Because the sun doesn't always shine, except, of course, as you all know, in Somerset. Anyway, thank you to Donna, Rachel and Paul. After the messages from our sponsors, the Israel-Hamas ceasefire is on the brink of implosion as Israel bombs Gaza with roughly 60 hostages still left there. Thank you.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Angela, what were the benefits you saw working on Strictly? What actually was this revelation to you that you should do more?
Well, I tell you what it was, mainly. It was because I think I've been dancing since I was 5, one way and another.
Life, haven't you? Yeah.
And I'm now 80, so 75 years I've been dancing. So I've always known, as have dance teachers all over the country, that dance is actually the best form of exercise you can possibly do, because it's not just good for your body, but it's also great for your mind, for your mental health, for your mind, for your happiness, for your outlook on life. And of course, you have to use your brain to remember what you're doing. So it's great for all sorts of things. And so I've known that, and dance teachers have known that, but it's always been sort of under the radar when people have thought about how do I get fit. They sort of think automatically about going to a gym or doing a
Getting on a treadmill,
doing all of that. So when I was doing Strictly, I got wonderful reaction from the public. I mean, I was just overwhelmed with a lot of people saying that I'd inspired them to think about dance. And I thought, how can I put these two things together then? And I was listening to Chris Whitty on radio, he's the Chief Medical Officer for England, saying that because the National Health Service is having such financial difficulties, it would help if we all took more responsibility for our own health by, he said, play football, go to a gym. Why not dance, he said, and I thought, that's what I can do. So because I've been involved with dance for a long time, I got in touch with every one of the dance organisations in the country, the ones who look after ballroom dancing, Latin, ballet, street dance, everything, all of them, and all the ballet companies, all the dance companies, and said, if we can get a national day of dance to get that message across, get dance teachers to open their doors and say, come and see what dance can do for you.
GB News, the People's Channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. I'm still Jacob Rees-Mogg, and we were debating vigorously net zero, and the mail mogs have come in. John says we're paying 4 times as much as India for energy, so a handful of insane climate ideologues can feel smug. I think that hits the nail on the head. Robert says, not one mention of the short life of wind turbines and solar panels. One gas power station is easier to maintain than millions of panels or windmills all over the place. And Mike says, why don't Western countries slap tariffs on China and their products and services for not making such a commitment to climate change? Starmer, Miliband and co are serious. Why don't they take such steps? Well, the problem with that, it will make all our goods in this country more expensive. There's been an enormous amount going on in the world over the last 24 hours. First of all, Israel launched strikes on Gaza because the remaining hostages have not been freed. Apparently 300 people, according to Hamas, have been killed. But today, the call has taken place between President Donald Trump and President Vladimir Putin, leading to a sort of semi-ceasefire that Putin has offered an infrastructure and power ceasefire, but not the full ceasefire that Zelensky was offering. He's refused to go that far. So where are we? Is the world more peaceful, closer to peace today than it was yesterday? Or are things still getting worse? Well, with me now is my panel, the former editor of The Sun, Kelvin Mackenzie, and the journalist and author, Michael Crick. Michael, first of all, on Putin, has he gone far enough to give a ceasefire, or is he actually trying to play Donald Trump?
Well, he seems to be offering half a ceasefire, and it's not yet clear, or maybe you've got more clarity on this, what Zelensky's response is, if indeed any response. Because unless Zelensky responds, presumably Putin is not going to go ahead with it. I don't know. But, I mean, I suppose it's progress, but it's a long way from the kind of progress that we all want.
And in Palestine, things seem to have got worse again with the Israelis attacking.
Absolutely dreadful what's happening in Palestine. And that is, I mean, it's just going to get worse and worse and worse. And the trouble is, given the number of deaths, particularly of civilians in Palestine, you're only creating even more extreme Palestinian terrorist groups for the future. And you can see why this should be. I mean, if somebody has lost their entire home, their whole family, a teenager, say, you know, they're not going to sit around, oh, well, you know, it'll be OK, we'll wait for Israeli democracy or we'll wait for the United Nations. Just this kind of action by the Israeli government it acts as a recruiting sergeant, and Israel has lost a huge number of sympathetic friends in the West, including in this country, including myself.
And what do they do in response to not getting the remaining hostages back? Do they just ignore that issue, or do they have to do something when Hamas hasn't delivered on its part of the commitment to the ceasefire?
Well, they have to resort to peaceful and negotiated means, and they have to get back, although this Israeli government is so far from it, it's impossible. It's very hard to believe they ever will get back to this idea of a two-state solution.
Kelvin...
well, there's never going to be a two-state solution.
No, I don't think you're probably right.
So that's the end of that. So at the end of the day, why don't Hamas, a terrorist outfit, right, why don't they just hand back the hostages? And the answer to that is that their power, they prefer to have the hostages and have the political and military power, and they don't give a damn about their people. It is their people who pay the price for their policies. And what I can't understand is why the people don't rise up. Because I actually heard on one, I think it was actually strangely enough at the BBC, I actually heard one of the, a lady, a mother, talking, and she was saying how terrible it was, and they said, well, what do you think about Hamas? And she said, I try not to think about Hamas. And that is the situation for the people of Gaza, that they are under a military dictatorship. It's the equivalent of Putin, right? You say a word out of place and you are in big trouble. So actually, I can't understand. Why don't the people rise up? There was 2 million of them. There's probably 15,000 Hamas troops today. Why don't they say, I don't want to. I don't want any more bombing.
Well, they don't
I don't want any more of this. Why don't they do that?
But because they're terrified.
Because they don't believe. They don't believe anymore in that.
It's very hard.
You ask why about hostages.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, in a way, Israel has brought some of this on itself in that. Remember that occasion? No, remember that occasion. Well, let me give you the example. Remember that occasion in 2011 where Israel got back, the Palestinians, Hamas, released one Israeli soldier, and Israel released 1,027 Hamas prisoners, including people who turned out to be important leaders. And it just said to Hamas, we regard one soldier as important as 1,000 of you. And they then realised the importance of hostage-taking. And that is the problem when you get into this whole hostage thing. I'm not condoning at all hostage-taking, but you can see what went on in their minds. That they know that if they take even dozens of hostages, the bargaining power that produces, as we've seen, is huge.
Right, but what they're telling these people next time is right, those numbers aren't that way around. It's 40,000 of you for one of our hostages. That's the truth. And I can't work out how it is that there is no leverage within the Arab world on these people, right? Where are they getting their money from now, right?
And
because Iran has been defeated effectively at the moment, but it'll be back.
And in the talks between Putin and Trump, they've got some agreement not to support Iran as well, which must be a gain for the United States. And Zelensky has apparently said that he thinks this deal is something that he may be able to work with. So that side of it looks as if it may be making some progress.
Right. So congratulate Trump on this, to be honest with you, because you could have said that if Biden had been there, actually, I quite like the idea of supplying more and more arms for Ukraine. I'd like to see them fight on, to be honest. This agreement will be shocking for parts of it. And Putin is a fantastic, incredible, mad liar. And the fact that he will say this, and this, if he can outlive democracy, which is the 4 years of Trump, he'll do that.
Yep. And Michael, your very good point on hostages, that if people succeed by taking hostages, they take more. If Putin benefits from having taken Ukraine, in whatever way, he does it again, doesn't he?
Yes.
That if you pay the Dane geld, the Dane doesn't go away.
We've got 2 hostages at the moment. We've got that old couple in Afghanistan who've done nothing but good work. Right? What on earth are we doing? You know, they've now been separated. The old boy's manacled, right? Not with his wife anymore. We don't hear anything. What good does it do us to be quiet on these occasions? That's why I admire
we
Israel.
absolutely shouldn't deal with terrorists or terror nations to get back hostages, because if you do, British citizens are at risk across the world.
I'm not in favour of doing the deal. I'm in favour of bombing them.
Sending in the SAS.
I'm in favour of bombing them. And I tell you what, if we don't do that...
You bomb the whole of Afghanistan just to get back to...
Yes.
That is the kind of thing that just leads to worse and worse situations, and 9/11 and...
Worked very well for Palmerston, but we'll talk about Palmerston on another occasion, because I have a brilliant guest waiting, Fleur Hassan-Nahoum, the outgoing Deputy Mayor of Jerusalem, who is going to join me now. Thank you very much for sparing the time this evening. So tell me, what exactly has happened overnight? There's been the bombing of Gaza. Is this making Hamas respond? Is there hope for the remaining hostages?
Well, what's happened is that the ceasefire has been a complete farce, because the ceasefire was given to Hamas on condition of releasing more hostages, or at least negotiating for the release of more hostages. And instead, what do they offer? 4 dead hostages and 1 live hostage, all American, dual citizens. I think they did that to try and see whether the Americans would be enticed into pushing Israel to accept this ridiculous deal. We have another 25 living hostages. Why are they offering us 4 dead hostages? It's ridiculous. And one of your speakers earlier said that Israel is losing world sympathy. The problem is that everybody forgot how this whole thing started. And that is with a horrible massacre on October 7th on peaceful communities in Israel's sovereign territory that nobody wanted and nobody asked for. And this is really the history of the state of Israel in one example. We have never started any wars. We have only defended ourselves. Our soldiers go out there with their hands tied behind their backs. We care more about the civilians in Gaza than Hamas do, because Hamas are a genocidal jihadi group. And I think what was missing in this previous conversation that you had with your guests is the connection between the jihadism of Hamas and the jihadism that is coming to you, to all of you, to Europe, to America, sponsored by Qatar.
So what would you say to David Lammy, who said yesterday in the House of Commons that Israel was in breach of international law? What response would you like to give to him?
I'd like to know exactly what breach he's talking about. What are we in breach of? We are the only country that in the middle of a war has to actually supply humanitarian aid to the enemy that then steals it for themselves. And it's not like they're feeding our hostages. So how many people are breaking international law? Israel is certainly not one of them.
And with the attacks overnight, did Israel have the support of the United States and President Trump, or is it going it alone at the moment?
No, Israel had the support of President Trump, because when President Trump said 2 weeks ago, if you don't release the hostages, all hell will break loose, all hell will break loose. We've had enough. It's been a year and a half. These hostages will not last that much longer. They are in terrible conditions. They're being tortured. They're being starved. What world do we live in that nobody seems to be outraged about the situation with the hostages? And the thing is that if you return the hostages, it's all over. So I don't want to be hearing about these death tolls. These death tolls were created by Hamas. If you can even believe them.
Thank you very much, Fleur. And you are so right to say we must never forget what happened in October of 2023. In a moment, has a new report proved that lockdowns devastated children's education? I'll be speaking to one of its authors next.
Dinner under the stars tonight?
That reminds me of our travel insurance.
You mean all clear skies?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast. Plenty of sunshine through the middle of the week for Italy and Croatia. Some chilly winds blowing across Greece and Turkey. Strong winds and more rain to come for Spain and Portugal. Some places here could see a month's worth of rain over the next day or so. Some of that showery rain affecting the Pyrenees and the south of France. Much of Italy dry and sunny. Plenty of sunshine over the Greek islands, but that northerly wind will be bringing a chill. But temperatures will be recovering slowly in Santorini over the next few days.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions. But every Friday night at 9 p.m, you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
No,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello everyone, Patrick Christie's here with an exclusive opportunity just for you, our incredible GB News viewers. We're giving you the opportunity to win a VIP studio tour right here at GB News HQ. Plus, you'll also get to meet yours truly. It's easy to enter, just head to gbnews.com/community competition and follow the easy steps. Don't miss out, enter now, and I'll see you soon at GB News. Full T's and C's apply.
If you want your news to be straight talking,
this is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get the book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, though. I'm so surprised. I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word. Welcome back. A new report marks the 5th anniversary of the day schools went into lockdown and has revealed that last year children lost 11 million days of learning, an increase of 67% on pre-pandemic levels. The report, published by the Institute for Public Policy Research, proposes a number of solutions, including increased funding and monitoring of absent children. But does it also suggest that we must never make the mistake of locking down again? Well, I'm joined now by one of the report's authors, Loic Menzies, Associate Fellow at the Institute for Public Policy Research, and my panel is still here. Loic, thank you for coming in.
Thank you for
having me. We have now established there is this big problem, 11 million days of schooling lost.
Yes, just last autumn, yeah.
And it's not 11 million hours lost across the whole range of children. It's a number of children who are never going to school. Is that right?
What we saw in this data is that 11 million days just last autumn were lost to learning. And clearly, if these people
it's just
not
in
being
one
at school,
term.
in one term,
so if you annualised, it's 33 million.
So we have this huge scale of a problem, and what we're trying to do with today's report is to shine a light on that, and for the IPPR and the difference to try and propose a set of solutions that can try and really tackle this problem that's facing us.
And one of your proposals is an £850 million fund. Where's the money coming from?
So at the moment we have this system when it comes to special needs support and additional support for kids, which sits behind these huge bureaucratic thresholds, which are a real challenge and a trial for parents who are trying to get the support their children need. And what we're trying to suggest is that actually there's an opportunity to bring some of that funding forward from behind those bureaucratic thresholds so that parents can access that support for their children at a much earlier stage. So in areas like speech and language needs that often present problems as kids are growing up, if we can get them the support earlier on that, then we estimate that 35,000 of these very expensive plans that then become necessary could be avoided.
So is it children who, having not been to school during lockdown, are too frightened to go in? Is it parents who have become disconnected from the school system? What type of child, what type of parent is involved, according to your studies?
So we see quite a mixture. This definitely disproportionately affects families in poverty, but we also see that this is often happening because schools also don't have the funding or the resources they need to provide this extra support that children need to rise to the challenges that they're facing. And if we want to have those really high expectations for all pupils, then we actually need to make sure that the support is commensurate with that expectation.
And how many of the families whose children aren't going in would be in contact with social services already, or are these people who aren't otherwise known to social services?
Quite a mixture. So certainly that can be one of the risk factors, but we're finding that children can sometimes be quite unexpectedly finding that there are problems that they're not able to get the support they need to that would keep them in school and keep them learning.
And one final thought before I bring the panel in. How many people who claim to be homeschooled, do you have any idea which ones are and which ones aren't? Because obviously homeschooling can work very well when it works, but if it's just parents keeping their children at home and pretending, that's very damaging for children.
So what we've seen is that there's a 20% rise in the number of children being homeschooled. And what's really important is that we know what's going on with those children. At the moment, we're flying blind. So we find that 90,000 children are moving school, and a third of them we don't know where they end up. So sometimes there will be children who are moving into homeschooling, but what we're seeing is that children are disappearing from the system. And when that happens, how do we know what's happening to them?
Let me bring the panel in. Kelvin, this is clearly a very serious problem. It's an after effect of lockdowns.
But there are a number of issues in all this, aren't there? The education and learning children out there who are suffering. The local authorities have no money, and they fight like fury every parent that turns up with some special needs child that needs particular help. And so that's one issue. But isn't there another issue? Haven't we got a load of thugs in the school who are abusing teachers and being suspended at record and high rates, and there's nowhere for these children to go? Isn't that true?
So we're certainly seeing a rise in exclusion, and that will be happening for all sorts of different reasons. And this report is about saying that whatever support a child needs, they need to be moved into that support if necessary, and that needs to be provided.
I'm not worried about the children so much in this particular incident. I'm worried about the teachers. The abuse that teachers have to face from these people that lead to suspensions and detentions and God knows what. So, look, I do buy some of the problem, but a lot of it comes down to money. And as we've just seen today, in relation to people claiming benefits, there is no money out there at the moment. So where is this £850 million going to come from?
Well, as you say, we've got this situation where people are fighting the local authority to get that funding. And actually, a lot of that is getting wrapped up in the wastage of trying to battle with that bureaucratic barrier.
What do you mean, the cost of lawyers and the like?
Exactly. So what we actually need to be doing is making sure that people can get the support they need at the point they need it, and that can mean that those needs are dealt with in school, and that if a child does move...
But in essence, it's a cost issue, isn't it? We haven't got any money, so $850 million sounds like a lot, but since we've just saved $5 billion, you know...
So actually...
Let's bring Michael in, get his thoughts on this. Do you think the money is available? Do you think this is a problem that needs urgent action? Or will it readjust as time goes on?
Well, I think it is a very serious problem right now. I think one of the problems that we had during lockdown was that the provision, a lot of schools carried on teaching people online and so on, but that was very patchy. And of course, a lot of pupils didn't have access to computers and all of that, or wanted to detect a certain reluctance for schools even to try and teach them because they thought there might be some pupils without access and therefore it would be unfair on them compared with the ones that did have it. And of course, it also is linked, of course, to this whole question of mental health problems for many young people, anxiety problems, which of course is all linked in with what Liz Kendall is saying today. The other thing I would say is that we can't assume that the next pandemic is going to be the same as COVID, because of course with COVID, it was very difficult to actually, there was very little spread of COVID, am I not right in saying, amongst children, and therefore it might have been reasonable to carry on people going to school, and of course some still did, the children of key workers. Whereas the next pandemic may not be like COVID, and we can't just respond to the next pandemic in the way that we perhaps should have done with COVID. Everyone's different.
Well, one other question I'd like to raise is working from home has actually led to a slight disconnect with parents who are at home saying, Tommy, it doesn't matter, we're around today, you needn't go to school. Hasn't that become an issue?
Yeah, so to take the first point you made about the funding, I think the key thing, one of the powerful things we do in this report today is to show that actually that investment would pay for itself within 5 years, because that earlier intervention on something like poor development of speech and language means that those pupils are not going to be behaving the way that they might do further down the line, and a lot of those, we estimate that 35,000 of those education and healthcare plans could actually be avoided, and therefore you'd be paying for yourself. So I think it's really important to see that this is actually a win-win situation where parents would no longer have to be fighting bureaucracy, and at the same time we'd be making sure these people.
It is a massive issue, I know, within my wider family.
Well, it's also completely
only because the woman I know in all this had brains and money and found a fantastic barrister, that an issue was solved.
And that drives spiralling costs, when we actually know that those are driving profits that are going to sovereign wealth funds of other countries that are running the provision that is having to be brought in at that crisis point when we should be intervening earlier.
All right. Loic and my panel, thank you very much. I did some homeschooling yesterday because two of my children weren't well enough to go in. I taught them about 1759, the year of victories, and how Wolfe, by winning at Quebec, made our king the King of Canada. All sorts of interesting things for home education. Anyway, coming on to the next section. Sorry to tell you about the death of the last Battle of Britain pilot. I'll be reflecting on the bravery of those who saved this country in the Second World War.
Hello and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. Now, after a sunny day, it's going to be a clear and frosty night for most of us, but more sunshine is expected over the next few days, and it will gradually warm up as the air increasingly comes from the south. It's these southerly winds around an area of high pressure that are bringing the clear skies, the relatively dry air, and as a result, under those clear skies, where the winds ease overnight, a widespread frost is expected, particularly for parts of mid Wales, the Midlands, northwards, widely in these places, -1 to -2 Celsius. In some sheltered spots, down to -5 to -9 degrees across northern England and Scotland. I think the far south and southwest will remain frost-free because here we've got a bit more of a breeze stirring things up and some patchy cloud cover to begin things across parts of Cornwall, perhaps even the odd spit of rain, mostly towards the far southwest, but elsewhere plenty of sunny skies. And under that sunshine, temperatures will soon rise. Wouldn't rule out the odd mist patch across parts of Northern Ireland, Scotland, Northern England first thing. However, they won't last long. By mid-morning, the mist has gone, the frost has gone as well, temperatures soon rising, and in fact, in the sunshine, by the afternoon, it's going to feel very pleasant with warmer weather expected compared to the last few days and lighter winds. Although, towards the south, there will be some patchy cloud coming and going, always the chance of the odd shower in South Wales and southwest England. These are the exceptions. For most, it's sunny, it's warm, 17 or 18 Celsius possible in the south, 13 further north. Thursday begins again with widespread frosty conditions, but plenty of sunshine once again, and it's an even warmer day. Yeah, there'll be some patchy cloud here and there, even the odd shower across southern parts, but for most it's a warm and sunny day with temperatures reaching 19 or 20 Celsius. It's all changed then through Friday and the weekend, increasing cloud and increasing showers.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dame. I'm so surprised. I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Headliners on GB News 11 p.m. every night. It's got 3 top comedians going through the next day's newspapers so you don't have to read them, which is great.
That's a good point. He's lying. I mean, maybe he's not lying.
That's Headliners every night from 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. as well on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Never before in the field of human conflict was so much owed by so many to so few. Those were the words of Winston Churchill in a speech made to the nation reflecting on the events of the Battle of Britain, the Second World War battle that represented the turning point for the United Kingdom in its fight against Nazi Germany. Well, today marks the death of the final Battle of Britain pilot. John, known as Paddy Hemingway, died at 105, so we thought it was right to remember him. I'm joined now by the military historian, Chris Newton. Chris, thank you very much for coming in. Why is remembrance so important, not just of those who died in the battle, but those who lived on and have lived to ripe old age, but provide us with a physical link to what happened?
Good evening. It's very important, firstly because of the sheer bravery in which they exhibited during the Battle of Britain and in other operations. It's also extremely important because, as you say, they provide a physical link, and they can provide their stories, and they can provide their wisdom and their stories of heroism to us. But also they also provide a warning as well as to what can happen when international relations break down and when there is a conflict. Especially over the past 20 or 30 years, we've kind of forgotten the fact that great power rivalry, great power conflict can occur, and we assumed that it wouldn't happen again, and yet it has happened again. And we go back to events like the Second World War in order to find out how previous generations coped with that.
So that's such a good point, because they did cope, and Paddy crash-landed, bailed out 4 times.
Yeah.
Once his parachute only half opened and he was saved because it was caught in a tree. That was enormous courage, and after that happened, he went straight back and flew again. He didn't start saying he needed counselling or anything like that. Were they a bolder, more backboned generation?
I mean, you could say that, yeah. I mean, they lived in particular times. They lived in times in much harsher conditions than we did today. But I think it's also the circumstances of the time as well. In the fact, as you said, they just had to get on with it. And whether, heaven forbid, that we don't find ourselves in a similar situation, you might find that our generation might live up to the moment as well.
And you were mentioning your own grandmother who died recently, and she was in the WAF. Did she talk to you about her experiences and what she felt like at the time and how she coped with what must have been such a difficult period?
Yeah. I mean, she did, but she also wanted to live her life as she was at the time as well, and also my granddad as well, who passed over sort of 12 years ago now. He also told me stories of when he served as well. Sometimes they want to tell you these things, and sometimes they want to live in the moment as well.
But it maintains a very strong link with our past, doesn't it? That people in families and people like Paddy Hemingway who illustrate what happened as a warning to what could happen in the future, but also perhaps a reassurance, because it's in, 1935, the Oxford Union votes that they would not vote for King and Country. In 1939, they all sign up. So we shouldn't lose hope. looking at what may be a namby-pamby generation now, because if put to the test, like in the 1930s, they might meet it?
Yeah, the circumstance of war changes everything, and you just don't know how people will react until the moment. And the Second World, as you say, the Second World War, it's still a living war. It's still, we can still talk to veterans about the conflict, but unfortunately that won't happen at some point, and it will become incumbent on historians like me to tell the story and to pass that link from the previous generation to the next generations.
And it's historians like you who have a very important role to play to make sure that it isn't forgotten, because we remember Paddy today, but we will remember them, is what we say every year at the Cenotaph.
Yeah, we've got to keep the memory alive, and we have to keep the memory of not only the heroism but also this potential for dictators to emerge, to invade other countries. We've forgotten that over the past 20 or so years, and unfortunately we're experiencing that again. And it's very important to not forget the lessons of history, and to keep and to ensure that anything is possible in history, and we need to be on our guard for any eventuality.
Well, thank you very much, Chris. We will remember them. Up next, it's the one and only Patrick Christys. Patrick, what have you got to entertain us with this evening?
Well, I don't say this lightly, Jacob, but this could quite possibly be the very best show I've ever done. Why? Astronauts who were stranded in space for 9 months are currently hurtling their way back down to Earth. We're going to bring that to you live as they splash down, hopefully. Also, Prince Harry's immigration files are being released. Will it turn out that he's lied on his immigration forms? And we might find out in the next 2 hours who killed JFK.
Well, that's going to be absolutely brilliant. And if it's your best ever programme, that is Gilding the Lily. That's coming up after the weather. I'll be back next week. In case you've forgotten, I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg. This has been State of the Nation. And you just want to know about the weather in Somerset, don't you? Well, it's really going to be terrific. If you've got solar panels in Somerset, you don't need to worry about gas.
Even though we'll see a cloudy start, it'll be a bright outlook for the rest of the day. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. Now, after a sunny day, it's going to be a clear and frosty night for most of us, but more sunshine is expected over the next few days, and it will gradually warm up as the air increasingly comes from the south. It's these southerly winds around an area of high pressure that are bringing the clear skies, the relatively dry air, and as a result, under those clear skies, where the winds ease overnight, a widespread frost is expected, particularly for parts of mid Wales, the Midlands, northwards, widely in these places, -1 to -2 Celsius. In some sheltered spots, down to -5 to -9 degrees across northern England and Scotland. I think the far south and southwest will remain frost-free, because here we've got a bit more of a breeze stirring things up, and some patchy cloud cover to begin things across parts of Cornwall, perhaps even the odd spit of rain, mostly towards the far southwest, but elsewhere plenty of sunny skies. And under that sunshine, temperatures will soon rise. Wouldn't rule out the odd mist patch across parts of Northern Ireland, Scotland, Northern England first thing. However, they won't last long. By mid-morning, the mist has gone, the frost has gone as well, temperatures soon rising, and in fact, in the sunshine, by the afternoon, it's going to feel very pleasant with warmer weather expected compared to the last few days and lighter winds. Although, towards the south, there will be some patchy cloud coming and going, always the chance of the odd shower in South Wales and Southwest England. These are the exceptions. For most, it's sunny, it's warm, 17 or 18 Celsius possible in the south, 13 further north. Thursday begins again with widespread frosty conditions, but plenty of sunshine once again, and it's an even warmer day. Yeah, there'll be some patchy cloud here and there, even the odd shower across southern parts, but for most it's a warm and sunny day with temperatures reaching 19 or 20 Celsius. It's all changed then through Friday and the weekend, increasing cloud and increasing showers.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
we're giving you the chance to splash out this season with an incredible £17,777 in tax-free cash. Jet off on your dream holiday, treat yourself to something special, or just save it for a rainy day. You'll also receive 2 brand new designer watches and a Mulberry handbag, so you can really look the part this spring. For another chance to win the lot, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus 1 standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. Call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB12 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 4th of April. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently. It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it? It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there short and it did nothing.
It's controversial. And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born. It's everything you need to kickstart your evening. Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it. That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.